we'll just try and make it feel natural. I don't like the whole structured anything. I just want it to feel like a conversation. I mean, that's
Sounds
what
good,
I've
man.
learned so far. So is my volume good?
Yeah, you're good, man. I can hear you perfect.
So thank you for coming on. I first wanted to start with the 84 game season. I know you got hurt quite a bit in your career. What do you think of people who play a similar role to you? How do you think they're handling this extra 2 games they have to play? I know it's not a lot, but I mean, every game is important. I mean,
Man, I wish there was 100 games a year, just so that you could
really?
rack up the games played every season. You want to try to get as many as possible. I mean,
Yeah.
injuries happen, right? They're unavoidable. But it's usually more, something happens as opposed to breaking down. It's not really a volume thing as much as you block a shot and break a bone, or you tear a muscle or something like that, right? And so obviously, like, there's usage over the year. You get beat down and it wears on you, but yeah, most of the games I missed, it was more just like an acute injury, from a hit or something like that. So I loved it, man. I loved, like, when you're feeling good and when you're healthy and when you're strong, and obviously you don't have a broken bone or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
you want to play games all the time. The best road trips is, you go on a 7-day road trip and play 5 games or something like that. You just got them all packed in there, and it's the best. That's why you want to play the games and not
Right.
just sit around waiting. So yeah, 84 would be great. I mean,
Yeah.
it's 2 extra games, whatever. It'll be good for everybody to pad their stats a bit.
Yeah. So I was looking, and some people are freaking out about it. I don't see any people who actually matter who are freaking out about it. Like, everybody online's freaking out about it, but and they're playing in, like, I think they're playing in Europe somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but it's pretty cool that they're expanding the game to over there. Are you a part of that?
Not part of the international strategy, no.
No. Okay.
I
Talking
mean,
about,
I think at the end of the day, like, like, the games, when you play, like, they're tiring, and obviously, like, especially the big minute guys, it racks up. But any good coach is going to, use his players appropriately, and the top dogs that you're playing 30 minutes a night, like, you have to know which games to dial them back on.
yeah.
The easier games, or the games where you're up, or whatever it is, like, that's a coach's job to manage his players, and work with the training staff and work with the players and have the good communication. So if anything, it's going to expose, good coaching, and, good player management, and, good, trainers, the guys that get it, get recovery. The thing that beats you up during a season that most people don't talk about is travel, like,
Yeah.
and lack of sleep. The schedule is a beast, and it's the most uneven thing in the NHL is how much you travel and how many hours you spend in a plane and how little sleep you get, depending on those hours, right? So, if you play in the, New York or Pittsburgh or Washington, and you're getting those easy trips more often than not, compared to Vancouver, where every trip is, a big flight, and you're coming home and you're changing, time zones,
Yeah.
and you're literally flying, extra thousands of kilometers every year. That's what beats you up. Sitting in an airplane seat, getting all cramped up. I don't care how big the seat is, like, it's so uncomfortable, and your body feels like crap, over the course of a season. So, so that's the bigger deal.
I was talking with I shouldn't say former MLB reliever, and it's even a little different with them because he was talking about the same thing. How it's like you're drinking pre-workout, going to work out at 11 o'clock at night, then trying to go to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning, and they have like 3 to 4 games in each city. You guys have one, and you're on the move the next day, and I couldn't imagine what that's like, having to consistently perform on what seems to be no sleep. It's a talent, and it's a talent on its own.
It's tough. I mean, and like I said, some teams are better than others. Some teams give it a lot more attention, and I think the attention that it deserves, right? And so they'll schedule, when it makes more sense to stay overnight. in the city and travel in the morning. And honestly, like the professionals, like the guys that, want to have a long career and not just your average career, like they're not hopping on the plane and playing poker for 6 hours straight after a game and getting no sleep, right? Like they're recovering properly, eating properly, getting their sleep, and it adds up, right? It really does add up over the course of a season, and you can tell the difference. The guys that have good sleep schedules, and it might be super nerdy, but whatever. I'd rather be a nerd and play,
Right.
have a long career as opposed to, getting to the playoff time and you're absolutely just wasted and your body's a mess.
Yeah, you can definitely tell like the young talents who like what could have been. Like it's I'm not one to talk, but it seems like some people just don't have the not drive, but more work ethic and dedication to do do the nerdy things that you just said. Like you need to get to bed on time, you need to get the sleep, you need to because I
It's a
when you're
professionalism. That's it's not really work ethic or
oh, okay, yeah,
drive. Or
that's better.
it's professionalism. It's taking it seriously. And I think the big transition and the thing that I used to tell guys, especially rookies coming out of junior, is like, this is now, like, it is now a job. Like, it's not a dream. It's not a, ambition. Like when you're playing in junior, like it's fun and you're working hard and you got drive and you're going and training the season. You're taking it seriously. But when you make the NHL, like guys got like 3 kids and, 30 years old,
Right.
and they're like, they want to do everything they can to make sure that you don't take their job. And the competition's for real, right? Like it's no joke. And the owners investing, millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars into the product, and everybody's jobs dependent on, winning. And so the stakes just, and that seems so obvious to say that. But it's amazing how many guys don't understand the transition, to professional hockey and what that means for them as an individual, and to professionalize themselves just like anybody else would when they, climb the corporate ladder or get, to a C-suite position or, whatever it may be. It's like, it's not just about you anymore. It's about, the entire staff in that office and the GM and the coach and the owner, like I said, investing money and having jobs on the line based on your performance. And so, like I said, the difference between, I forget what the average NHL career is, but I think it's around 3 years. That's the difference. The guys that take it seriously and the guys that make it and the guys that, understand that it's a job and they'll do whatever it is to maintain that job. Like they have long careers. And then the guys that are there for a good time, like it's a short time.
Did you want to talk about you not getting in the top 100 prospects? You went to I forget what college or you went somewhere to do your own combine, and you messaged all of the NHL GMs, like just giving them a rundown on like, this is who I am, because they don't get you know what I mean? Like, can you give me a little bit of backstory into that?
Yeah, I can give you the background on that one. So I played junior hockey in Portland, Oregon. So that's the WHL. We had a great team, great players, and I had a good career. Like I played as a 15-year-old for a couple of games, and then I started as a 16-year-old. I made the All-Star game a few times. Like, so going into draft, like feeling pretty good about myself, right? But I was an undersized defenseman. I'm 5'10", and especially back, when I started in the league, like it was a bigger league. And so come draft time, like I wasn't even ranked at all in the central scouting as far as like prospects who are up to get drafted, which whatever, it's a shot to the ego, so it kind of burns a bridge. But the big disadvantage is that you don't get a chance to go to combine, right? So you don't get to do the testing, you don't get to do the interviews with the NHL teams to show them who you are physically, but also just mentally, right, and show them the kind of person you are. So so that's the big disadvantage of not being ranked by central scouting. And so when that happened to me, it was like, you could either just sit there and be mad about it or, do something about it. So it's a lot, more effective to actually go and find what you can do. And so I did, like you said, I went to the University of Alberta, and they have a full testing, full testing setup there at the university. I probably paid like $40 or whatever. It's pretty cheap. You do the full test and you get all the results, VO2, wind gate, bench press, the body composition, like all the exact same stuff that they did at the combine. And then I took those results, made a little cover letter, basically saying like, hey, I'm Andrew Ference, played for Portland Winterhawks. Here's my kind of resume. Not ranked by Central Scouting, so I went and did my own, and think that you should take a shot on me. So, and this was 97, I think. So it was just a fax machine. Like I didn't have emails and stuff like that for all the GMs. Wow. So yeah, I just faxed it off to the GMs. I didn't get any responses, but I did get drafted. Maybe a month and a half later, and Craig Patrick from Pittsburgh, who was a GM at the time, said, "Oh, that was pretty audacious of you." So, but it helps, right? Like any kind of advantage you can give, and I talk to kids now, and kind of going through it, and my daughter's about to graduate. She graduates out of high school. My youngest daughter graduates out of high school this year, so I've been around the high school a lot, like between my oldest daughter and her now graduating. So I've been helping out with hockey teams for quite a few years. So I see some young guys, and even with our rookies that come into the NHL, we do some work with them. And, I really do pound home that message all the time, is like, you got to do something to be memorable. Mm-hmm. Like if you're trying out, if you're trying to make a team, or if you're in a competitive industry, like, blending in is about the worst thing you can do, and so, I see a lot of people kind of default to doing what everybody else is doing because there's a safety to that, and blending in, there is a safety to, not sticking your head up. And, but in my case, like, you had to do something. And I think doing stuff like that, it shows who you are and shows that you want it. And, nobody's going to come knock on your door offering you, your dream job, mm-hmm. right? Like, whether that's in banking or for sports or anything, like, nothing's going to land at just falling.
Right. Yeah. You got to be proactive, right? About it.
Yeah. So you go get it. So that's, basically what I did. And that was like the foot in the door. And then obviously, you get drafted, you get invited to training camp, and then you get to do it all over mm-hmm. again and try to, all right, what's the next thing I got to do to be memorable and stand out?
That's great. I mean, do you think you were the only one doing that at that time? Had you heard anybody else do that?
No. I mean, because most people are getting drafted.
That's memorable, though. So, if they didn't get, I mean, you would know if they didn't get on the top 100 and do the combine.
Yeah. No, I mean, I haven't heard of anybody else, do that. But like, I'm also not the only guy that's not, like, there's plenty of guys that have had Hall of Fame careers without getting drafted, right? So I always had tons of respect for those guys, like, because it's a disadvantage. Mm-hmm. The other, the advantage of being drafted high is obviously the obvious ones. Like, it's great, you line yourself up for a good contract and stuff like that. But the big thing about getting drafted high is that the general manager's reputation is kind of linked to you, mm-hmm. right? And so, they're going to do everything they can to make sure that you succeed because they picked you. Right. And so it's, your success is, also tied a bit to their success. And, you draft somebody high and they turn out to, not be so great. Well, you're going to do everything you can to, try to make them great and give them every advantage you can because it's a reflection on, your choice. Right. So those guys that, have great careers and start, and especially at the beginning of their careers that are undrafted, like, kudos. I always had the most respect for those guys because they had every disadvantage. And like I said, they didn't have a GM or anybody like that was, tied to their success.
Right. Yeah. So you got drafted by the Penguins. You went to the Calgary Flames. Then you went to the Bruins. Then you finished your career with the Oilers. I want to stick around the Penguins. I'm getting to the story a little bit earlier than I had thought I was going to, but I heard. Now, I don't know. We can edit this out if it's something you don't want to talk about, but there's a guy goes by the name of. You guys were on a plane, and I heard that you saw someone throw a hamburger. Can you explain a little bit more into that? I've got some more details. I don't know if you know, but he has made a statement on it.
Well, I mean, it's quite honestly not really worth talking about. He's an interesting guy who I think has had more than his fair share of trouble with the law, and I know when he came to the Penguins, it was one of those things that's quite honestly shocking that an NHL team took a chance on him, based on his conviction and the run-ins with the law. So to give this guy more air is probably a disservice to the game of hockey.
Okay, you're right. So. Yeah, that's true. I thought it was interesting. Yeah. I see him on Instagram all the time, just making videos, screaming at people and all that.
I'm sure he does the screaming part well, and he's probably got a whole shtick. But
yeah, seems like not a great guy.
But this isn't a good person for the game of hockey,
right? He has. I'll finish it off with this. He has made a statement. He did beat up Christoph Oliva, I think is how you say his name. I heard it in the video on that same flight.
Yeah, he was my teammate. Yeah, Polish guy.
So he said he did not have an interaction with a certain Hall of Famer, but he did with someone else.
Well, he's had plenty of interactions. That guy, I'm sure.
I don't get people are like that. I just don't.
It's tiring, to be honest. It's
mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it sells, right? And that's, I guess, the unfortunate part of. I think there's a way to use social media in an incredibly positive way and build,
mm-hmm.
And build community and build positivity and build, whether it's athletes or youth into better people,
mm-hmm.
right? And it's incredible, like the skill that I see in hockey today and what kids can do and just how advanced they are, and whether it is the hard skills of shooting, passing, stick handling, like all the stuff, like a lot of it I attribute not to like some great coaching, but it's the ability to see the entire world now and what everybody around the world is
mm-hmm.
doing and trying to mimic that and copy that. I know that what I was exposed to as a kid, was essentially what was on TV, whatever game was being played, and then whatever kids lived around my neighborhood mm-hmm. or kids that I played against, right? Like that's the only hockey that I saw. And so, you'd catch the highlights and you'd catch, Don Cherry would have like his highlight videos every year, Rock'em Sock'em. So you'd watch that. And then, you had like the neighborhood kids that you could see whatever moves they were doing. So you think of like how limited that information that you're taking in and the influence that you're taking
mm-hmm.
in is. And it's compared to now, like, you can see what everybody's doing because everybody's posting it and everybody's kind of one-upping each other and try this and try this and try this. And, and the tutorials around it,
mm-hmm.
right? And breaking stuff down. If you're a kid that, wants to improve, like you have the world's library at your fingertips for every
mm-hmm.
sport, right? So I think a lot of the progression in sport is due to that, and like that's kind of how I see, like, whether it's in sport or just in life, right? About learning and developing and stuff like that. Like, YouTube and social media and podcasts
mm-hmm.
like this, like, have such an opportunity to have such a positive impact on so many people's lives. So. Yeah, so kudos to people that use it right, but like obviously you see the other side of it, right? Like there is a incentive to be provocative and just say outrageous stuff.
Get clicks.
And unfortunately, it gets a lot of mm-hmm. attention, and it's basically the exact opposite, right? It's a waste of everybody's time.
Yeah, and I mean even to add to your point, we wouldn't have been able to do this podcast right now if not for social media. Because I reached out to you on Instagram, and you surprised. I was actually shocked you responded, but
Yeah, man.
it's pretty good.
Well, I get not a lot. I get a few requests for to do stuff like this, but I love, I don't know how old you are, but like you seem pretty young, but I love people
Well,
that like,
it does seem that way.
I love people that do stuff. People create, people that create things. And like I said, they're not just consumers. And so it obviously took some work. You had to get the gear, you had to reach out, you had to, like, the same way that I faxed GMs about like, hey, give me a shot. Like, you reached out and, hey, like, can you do this interview? I'm trying to build up this podcast. Like, I have so much respect for people that, build something positive and are doing something positive. So
Yeah, like during a like right now, I'm not sure if you pay attention to MLB, Red Sox. Jaron Duran's having some issues right now. Everybody's posting about it. I don't see the need for it. He is having let the emotions get the best of him. I try to not expose that more with my platform. It's not one of the biggest out there, but I think I have a little bit of influence on some people, and I see everybody posting about it just so they can get clicks. I don't think that's the right thing to do, because you're exposing someone who's in a vulnerable state. I'm trying to follow the golden rule with that. I wouldn't want to be posted about when stuff like that's happening, and not gonna say some crazy stuff. Like, I'm sure if you had a bad game, you'd get death threats in your Instagram DMs or in just on the street somewhere. It's bad. I mean, I'm just trying to be how I would want the media to be if I was a player.
it seems like a good approach. I think the best conversations I had, and quite honestly, they turn into relationships. But you see the certain reporters and people that cover the game, over the course of a career, like, quite a bit, and it's very easy to tell the ones that are there for substance and to, like, get to actually know you, and the ones that are just there to complete their narrative and whatever they're saying, and really, like, their conversations with you are almost pointless. And there's a lot of value, right? Like, to the ones that are there to understand, who you are, how you got there. The less about, like, what happens on the field or the ice and the action, and more about, like, the recipe of, like, what built you to get to here, and, like, what drives you, and, like, the deeper stuff, right? And the stuff that is actually, like, fun to talk about and interesting. There's no shortage of, like, the quick, like, how'd you feel after you lost? It's like, well, what do you
think?
Yeah, like, come on. But yeah, the people that are covering, the game of sports from a storytelling angle, as far as, like, who these people are. Yeah, like I said, like, what made them into, the type of person they are. And there's a lot of interesting stories. And I think a lot of athletes just shut down, with a lot of interviews, because they're boring, to be quite frank. I mean, it's just, they usually don't get below a surface level where, the people even really seem interested in learning some of the stuff. And it's more just surface level kind of game time stuff that, I don't know.
Yeah. The more I'm watching these interviews with NHL players, MLB, NBA, NFL, you can tell the reporters that they like, because the reporters they like ask, I won't say more meaningful questions, because sometimes they're the exact same, but the players know they're not going to try and twist their words and paint a certain narrative like that they already have. I didn't realize that until I'm starting to try and get, like, behind the scenes. Like, I'm interviewing you right now, but I don't think many people realize that you brought up a good point. It turns into friendships, the relationships or relationships you have with all the reporters. Did you want to talk about what you're doing with the NHL right now? Like, what you studied corporate sustainability in college, and now you are the director of social impact, growth, and fan development.
Yeah, it's basically right after I retired. I think I was retired for about 6 to 8 months or something like that before I took the job with NHL. So like during my playing career, I worked on a number of like community initiatives, like especially around sustainability. I went carbon neutral for most of my career, and worked with some environmental organizations to like set up a program for players to do that. Worked with the NHL on developing their sustainability platform. Yeah, I always was involved in the community, like doing different, different initiatives in the places that I lived. And the other part when I was a player is that I was always a union rep, right? So
Mm-hmm.
all we were obviously unionized, and I was a union rep for most of my career. And obviously, going through two lockouts, you end up spending a lot of time in the boardroom and stuff like that with the people at the NHL and with the lawyers and different parts of the department. Out of one of our lockouts in the collective bargaining agreement, there was a couple groups that were formed, and it was essentially like to allow players to sit in on some of the marketing meetings, um, and learn and give their 2 cents about TV deals and the way the game was being marketed. During negotiations, players I think wanted to be more involved in some of the business of the
Mm-hmm.
NHL. And so I was part of that committee that basically, yeah, got the invite and go in and sat through quite a few, marketing meetings, and got to kind of be a fly on the wall for seeing how the business worked at the NHL. And so it was really fascinating. And like I said, got to know some of the people that worked there
Mm-hmm.
over the years. And so when my career was coming to a close, I knew, basically it was my last contract in Edmonton. I went back to school through Harvard Extension. So they do all the online classes, and
Yeah.
they had a 2 year course that was around corporate sustainability. So I wanted to put some meat on the bones, and I actually thought I was going to come back to Boston, go back to school for my master's at the Kennedy School.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was doing some schoolwork just to kind of suss up my resume for that program and let them know I could still write and you know do a research paper and stuff like that. And so I
Yeah.
wanted to get some educational meat on my bones, for lack of a better term. But once my career ended, they're developing a new department at the NHL. They're kind of consolidating a few departments, and it turned into the one that I'm working at now, which is social impact, growth, and legislative affairs. And so it's, yeah, like all the good stuff that the league and the clubs are doing. Whether it's pride initiatives, NHL Green, sustainability initiatives, like uh, community work, and then the growth initiatives is how do we grow the game? Street hockey, roller hockey, youth like learn to play,
Yeah.
getting people involved in the game, and then legislative affairs is the work with the government. So we have a full team and works with in Washington on the American side, and then obviously on the Canadian side there's a lot less, but if there's any government work that takes place in our department as well. So yeah, it's a bit of a mix of I guess of all that. Obviously the initiatives around community service, are really interesting for me. I think as a player, it brought me so much in my career of getting involved in community and doing stuff beyond hockey and using the platform for good. And so being able to do that at the league level now is awesome. It's just a bigger scale.
Mm-hmm.
Same with sustainability initiatives, right? Like it's one thing for me to recycle at home. It's another thing for me to, push, the reduction in plastic across the league. And then
Yeah.
now it just scales up. So the impact that you can have is, just so much bigger. Um, the growth initiatives are fun. I love, like, as much as I was competitive and played a professional career, like just having fun, like in youth sports, is something that's being lost more and more each year. I think there's a professionalization of youth sports, which is just sickening. Um, I grew up in an era that I played every sport. Like I must have played 20 different sports. Growing up as a kid, and I had time for them all,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a blast with them all. Like none of them were ultra serious and cost a ton of money. And I didn't have some hyper focus on making the NHL. Like I was just an athlete and a kid having fun playing a ton of
Yep.
different sports. And so part of my job is even with our street hockey program is like, okay, how do we make a street hockey program, but how do we make it fun? And how do we,
Yeah.
set the parameters that this thing is going to be run where, we're playing music, we're having a good time. It's less about like X's and O's and more just about like, come out, have a good sweat, have a laugh, listen to some good tunes,
Yeah.
try the new move you want to try. So I really enjoy like that type of work and the ability to, I guess use the weight of the NHL to, try to influence our sport for the better.
So this is kind of it's not a two-parter, two different questions, but I want to say them both at the same time. You're talking about the professionalization of youth sports. I remember when I grew up playing hockey, and at a certain point, it had to become more. I played travel hockey, and I had to travel 30 or 40 minutes every day to practice to his coach that was just screaming at me. His son sucked, but anyway, um, normally how it goes. It just made it not fun. So I stopped playing. It ruined it for me. And I wasn't even doing anything wrong. So we had someone come live with us, Billet, and he was playing hockey locally. And for those who don't know what billet is, they come down. It explains it, but they come down because they need to play hockey around here, and then the team pays for their housing and all that. Um, he was talking to my dad, and he's like, "What's Cameron doing? Why is the coach yelling at him? He's not doing anything." And I played defense. I wasn't particularly good. I was okay, but there's a lot of people like that. They take it way too serious. It's just, I mean, obviously you made money at it, but it's just a game at the end of the day. You shouldn't be screaming at someone because they're not back checking enough. Like I don't know. And the second,
It's crazy. And like I said, about my earlier point about the professionalization when it's in the NHL, and there's literally millions of dollars on the line, for ownership and staff, and that's not the case in youth hockey. And yeah, the fact that any coach is screaming his head off at kids is insane, right? Like, for what?
right.
So yeah, it's sad. Honestly, it's I think from an individual standpoint to having anxiety and have a coach yelling at you or a parent being super serious about anything and just it really sucking the fun out of it. It's sad, like from the individual's point of view, but even from our point of view, right? Like at the NHL, like we don't want a generation of kids that looks at their hockey experience and relates it to angry parents, screaming coaches, anxiety, like all these kind of things is like, it's so negative. Like we want a generation of kids that's going to look at their experience with hockey and be like, God, I made so many friends and it was awesome. Like it was such a good time. And, has really a good emotional bond with the game. Right. And that's through good memories. I think the dumbest and saddest thing I think I've heard since retiring is, and I forget the age group, but it was probably like 12-year-olds or something like that. But this coach was like, they're good 12-year-olds, whatever, they're a travel team. But he had a rule that his team wasn't allowed to swim at the hotel pool, during tournaments, because we're really serious and like they're going to waste their energy and not be ready for the game, the next day. And I was just like that sums up like the stupidity in youth sports is, denying kids, the ability to go play in the pool and have fun, on like during a tournament. And for what?
Right.
Like maybe they do lose the next game. Like who cares? Like it doesn't, like who's that for? Like it's just a lot of it's a vanity project for, some of the youth coaches to like, oh, I'm the coach of the champions or whatever it is, right? Like
Yeah.
the kids don't remember. Like I don't remember which tournaments I won or lost when I was 12 or
Yeah.
13, but I do remember like the water
You're,
slide, and like
yeah.
screwing around and playing floor hockey with my buddies and like that's the stuff, right? And like you're not making the NHL when you're 12. Like, are you building blocks? Yeah, but one of the blocks is actually enjoying it and having fun and being self-driven, right? Like the vast majority of people that make it, like if that's the goal is to make it, like they're self-driven, they're not being pushed by a parent or a coach, or like it's an internal thing. And the kids that are willing to go out and shoot 1,000 pucks without a parent telling them, or just go skate around and be creative and work hard at everything they do on their own without being pushed, like those are the people that make it. It's not
definitely.
the kids that save their energy from not going to the hotel pool. Like, it's just so stupid. It's so dumb. And there's a lot of that, unfortunately, because I think they whether it's the coach or parents or whoever, and they're paying a lot of money for whatever team it is, like they think that that's serious, right? Like, and nobody will take them serious if they're having too much fun, which is the most ridiculous thing.
I went to I think 3 tournaments in Jay Peak in Vermont. They have this really cool like indoor water park. So in the middle of the winter, you get to go and there's like a 100-foot drop slide. It was awesome. But I don't remember the tournaments. I think we lost them all. I think we won one of them maybe.
Yeah, but who cares?
Exactly. Who cares? Because like right now, I don't care if I won those tournaments or not. What's it going to benefit me? It's not. And then talking, my second point I wanted to get to, you're talking about the impact you make with like recycling at home versus making an impact league wide. Have you ever thought of, I know you're posting a little bit on your Instagram account, but have you ever thought of like tutorials on how to do those things on YouTube? Because I think there's a big market for that. I think people just want to know how to do it. I don't think people are like, oh, I'm not doing that. They just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, trust me, I have no shortage of ideas. What I do have a shortage of is time. So,
right, yeah, that's true.
I would love, honestly, like there's a lot of stuff in my day that I screw around. I live outside. I got chickens in a garden, and I sew and I bake. And if I could have like a little camera crew follow me around and do it for me, I'd be like, please, that'd be awesome. But it takes time, and so even just posting a bit on Instagram and like I said, trying to use social media for good to show people, like, especially young hockey players, that you can be so much more than just an athlete that only does sports. Like, you can cook, like you can grow stuff, you can raise animals and learn how to do all these different skills. I call them grandma skills, right? Like all the stuff my grandma did. I find myself doing, and I love it, man. Like I'm making bread right now. Like I got it downstairs. So, like stuff like that is trying to like do the odd thing to show people that like, just do it, man. Like be curious, live a curious life. And like, we only got so many years to do it. Like, well, why limit yourself? So like, I enjoy making that kind of stuff and putting good, positive things out there and showing a bit of my life. And, the sustainability stuff is, like ultra important. I think that there's probably a balance between, the really scientific part of it, where you're going over the data and some of the stuff that is maybe a little less unsexy, and the world that we live in is like some of the more compelling content. I think some of the stuff I've used on Instagram is upcycling our signage. I actually just got a 50-pound box of it yesterday. A bunch of signs that we and fabric that we used at one of our events this year at the NHL used to get tossed, right? Like, used to go to the garbage and go to the landfill. And so we started a program now where we upcycle it into bags. So make like gym bags, hockey bags, like all different kinds of stuff instead of it going to the garbage.
There we go.
Hey, you're back.
Cool. I thought that was you for a second. I did when I was doing a podcast with.
Mine does drop once in a while. So
I was doing the podcast with Milan Lucic, and he was in Scotland, I think, at the time, and we had like 5 or 6 times where it just dropped out completely for like a minute. It was difficult editing that, making it look good. So continue on with the upcycled signs. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So like the signage, like you think about like an event, like, there's advertising all over the place and just the branding of a space, right? So that whether it's our outdoor games or stadium series, or we had just club business meetings, right? All the clubs, send personnel, and it's basically a giant conference. So the signage that goes into that, that's all the team logos, and even something as simple as like a fan park, like exit this way, entrance, beer gardens, like those are all signs that are made specifically for an event, right? And they're branded and they look cool. Like they're great. They have our club's branding on them. Our creative services team does an incredible job with a lot of the logos and stuff like that. And they're made out of a very good material. It's like vinyl and tough, and so yeah, pounds of it, right? You used to just get thrown out after because there's no real usage for them after an event. And so started a program where we're going to upcycle that material into bags, like gym bags, hockey bags, different just usable things. And yeah, like it's little things. It's not like saving the world for sure, but it's like one of those little puzzle pieces of like a number of puzzle pieces that will make a big difference. And yeah, and it's fun. It's a good story, right? Like it's and I enjoy it. It's like, I think it's always like a real life win when I can marry one of my interests in normal life with a job, with a job role. And so that's, I get on my sewing machine. I got a big industrial sewing machine, and I make these bags. It's pretty fun.
Okay.
The guys that inspired me for that was the equipment managers, because they're all good sewers.
I had at the local arena I live by, he used to make the bags for the New York Rangers. And then my dad got him a job at a local-ish, at a shipyard, and he's making boat sails there now.
Sweet.
So it's
Nice.
it's pretty cool.
That's really cool. That's awesome. That's a good gig.
It's pretty cool. I thought that was like the coolest job ever when he told me about it.
I've seen people, and the other end of that is like down in like Newport, stuff like that. Like there's companies that use the old sails, and they'll make stuff out of that because that material is so good too.
Or like wallets.
Yeah.
You said the little things you do, they're not going to make a difference. I think that's what does make a difference. I think if everybody, I mean, obviously you're not going to offset what China's doing. Was that me? Jesus, we get people coming to our door saying, "Oh yeah, I get this new Wi-Fi. It's great. Look what's happening now. This is sucky." I think that's what makes the biggest difference. Just little things people do. I mean, little things people do are what little people can control. Like if we're not a huge corporation, we don't have that huge of an impact. I mean, you have more impact than most people because you work with the NHL and you deal in that business, but
yeah, I think anything that you're passionate about, and like for me, obviously, things around sustainability, and I, hope that a lot more people are passionate about it. I think, the younger generation should be, based on all the science and, what we're seeing with our own two eyes right now. But I think one of the things that you can do is just get frustrated and throw up your hands, or like do something about it.
right.
It goes back to my earlier point. It's like, it's just life, man. Like you're going to come across all kinds of stuff where you can either just get frustrated and feel fed up, or sad or mad or whatever it is, and like feel sorry for yourself, or you do something about it. So that's kind of the way I see most things, like whether it's sports or life or work or anything. I just like you try to use my energy in the best way possible. So I think other people could do that. It's like you do stuff at home, but also like put your energy into finding like, how do I get a job where I do have influence? How do I work myself into a position where I get to control some of the budget and where it goes and how it's used, and do it for good, right? You find yourself in a position like that, and like I said, it doesn't just happen by accident or by chance, but you put yourself in those positions and make a difference. And what's the other option, right? Like doing nothing.
Exactly. So I wanted to talk about sustainability, and I saw a story that you have the same composting worms that lived in 4 different cities. I don't know how true that is. Did you bring It's not true.
No, it's true for sure.
Oh, it
Well,
is.
I mean, like, I'm
Not the same.
I'm sure, yeah, like it's the same colony, right? Like, I don't know how long they live for, but
How'd you do that? How'd you manage that?
because I
Living like
packed
all
them.
over the place.
So, like, I
Okay.
started them in Calgary. Like, I literally ordered them from, I forget which website. It was like Uncle Bob's Worm Farm or something like that. And they literally like show up in a, like in a, with cardboard and like stuff like that. And you get like a pound of these worms. They're special worms. They're for composting. They're called red wigglers. And then you start
Okay.
your own like compost bin. And so I started that in Calgary, and then I got traded to Boston. And so like you pack up your whole house, like literally your whole house, including the worms. And so then I took them to
Yeah.
Boston,
Yeah.
and they lived in the fire escape there for 8 years, I guess, and kept them going. And I would take the compost and throw it out into the garden beds in the north end. And so there's really healthy soil around around parts of the north end, thanks to me and my worms. And then same thing, signed with Edmonton, took them there, and now they're here with me, and they live in my greenhouse, and I'm on Vancouver Island. And so
That's
yeah, so I
awesome.
guess it's probably 20 some years in 4 cities. But yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, I like to garden, and like there's nothing better than like fresh veggies, like that you grow. This is the best time of year, and so
Mm-hmm.
I use the worms for the composting of all the scraps and stuff like that. And yeah, I got chickens now too,
Cool.
so they also help out.
Yeah, I saw
So
that.
now it's a
Yeah.
battle between the worms and the chickens of who gets the food scraps.
So I want to go back to hockey. Um, Talking about your time in Edmonton, you had Jaromir Jagr as your captain in Pittsburgh. You had Jerome McGinley. You had Chara. Then you get to Edmonton, and I'm reading a story that says exactly what it is. Let me see. I wrote it down. Talking about how the team didn't take it serious. They were out. You're not going to win many games if they're out until 5 o'clock in the morning. How discouraging was that? Moving from winning team to winning team to winning team. Not all at once, but did you feel like you couldn't do anything? Like it just seemed like whatever you did didn't matter because they just. Do you get what I'm saying?
Well, I think like anything in life, like I mean, even being a dad, like you try to exert influence in the most positive way, right? And I think the thing that I learned through the captains that I had, and not just the captains, but like there's different leaders on the team, right? It's not always the person
Yeah.
you want to see, but
Right.
like
Yeah.
there's some really influential people in my career that taught me so much. Like Alexei Kovalev was one, Marty Jelena in Calgary was another, Stefan Yell in Calgary was awesome. And so you play with all these different people, and but I did have extraordinary captains. Um, but most of the people that I, thinking about it now and looking back, on it, like the guys that made a huge influence on me all had really long careers. Um, and obviously the captains and the super skilled guys, that seems like an obvious. But some of the other guys like were role, like Stefan Yell is a good example. Like he was a bit of a role player, and killed penalties and did all the dirty work. He had a long
Mm-hmm.
career, but he had the long career because he took it seriously. And like I said, that he was a professional about it, and took a ton of pride in his job, and what he did for the team, right? And so I think seeing all that, the influence on me helped me, and I saw it myself. Like there's no way I have a long career. I was average size, pretty average skill. Like there was a ton of guys that could do what I did on the ice. Like really, like every
Mm-hmm.
training camp, like I would see a new crop of young guys come in, and they all could do what I did. Like I wasn't really doing anything that anybody else could, but I could do it more consistently, and I could do it harder, and I could show up every
Mm-hmm.
day and be accountable. And I knew that's what coaches like, and I knew that's how you could have an extended career. And I knew that doing stuff in the community and being a positive influence on the team brand counted for something. And so
Right.
all those little things, right, like add up into a long career. And so I think what I tried to do once I became more of a veteran, in Boston as well, is
Mm-hmm.
try to influence the young guys and like tell them like this is, I would love nothing more than for my teammates to have a similar experience to what I had and play for a long time. And it's the best thing in the world, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
some of it you try to lead by example. Some of it you try to lead through a speech or talking or a meeting or one-on-one or taking somebody out or whatever it is. Like, and so there's different ways of approaching it. But at the end of the day, like, you really only control you, and
Right.
other people
That's
are
true.
going to make their decisions about how they live their lives and how they operate and how they show up. And so I think as a leader, like, you try to influence and you do what you can, and sometimes you get it wrong. Like, you don't do a good job, and so you have to be accountable to that. But at the end of the day, you have to realize that there's sometimes only so much that's in your control, and
Right.
only so much that you can influence. And um, yeah, like I think that group in Edmonton was so young, but I sent like and you watch them. A lot of guys that came out of there actually did have long careers, and
Mm-hmm.
a couple didn't. A couple flamed out and had very short careers. But you look at somebody like Taylor Hall. Like this year, like I sent him a note after he won, just like, wow, like, that's awesome, man. Like, good for
Yeah.
you. Like, he bounced around and played with a number of teams and was a massive part of that run this year. And and I remember seeing a story, during our broadcast up here about Brenda Moore talking about him, just how hard he worked in practice, and the influence that he had on the younger guys on the team and stuff like that. And I was like, it's pretty awesome. Like, it's cool to see that, and a guy like that, figure out what it takes to be a professional and extend your career, no
Mm-hmm.
matter how much skill you have, right? Like,
Right.
it's a rare person that is going to have a long career on just skill. Like, there's a few, like there's a couple that you're just like shake your head at, and you're like, I don't know how this guy, like, how he did it,
Right.
but
Might be on the
that's a
Oilers right now.
rarity, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's um, yeah, it's difficult, yeah, for sure, going from winning to losing, and being in an environment that is so different. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I think I always had a healthy idea of how much I would be listened to and how much influence I had, and
Right.
you just try to, like I said, yeah, lead by example and do the right thing, and have the right kind of conversations, but know your limits, or else you can drive yourself crazy
Mhm.
too.
So when you got to the Oilers, I don't know exactly when this was. The Oilers asked for you to talk with the guys in development camp in 2014. It was in 2014. You declined. I don't know if this is true. This is what I read. I'm asking for confirmation. You instead took them / kidnapped them and brought them out to the woods to conduct army training with a few Canadian light infantry members. The player that stood out most to you was Leon Draisaitl. Can you confirm or deny that you're the reason for all of his success?
Definitely not the reason for success.
No.
A funny story about Leon too is his dad was my coach during the lockout in the Czech Republic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so great.
That's
He's an
awesome.
awesome dude, like really awesome dude. And then we drafted Leon, so it was pretty cool. The link there, but the story is basically true. You got most of it right. It was during rookie orientation camp,
Okay.
and so like every team has these things during the summertime, and they were doing it in Jasper, which is a mountain town, a couple hours outside of Edmonton. And so they asked,
Yeah.
like, yeah, you come up. We have a night. You come talk to the guys, just about like this kind of stuff, right? Like how to have a career. And I was like, oh, sounds kind of boring, to be honest. Like, I want to drive like 3.5 hours one way to like talk to guys, like, um,
Yeah.
and so I asked him, like, do you mind if I be a little bit more creative? And I said, I think I can add something to the camp. And so I'm always big on, what guys can do on the ice is like, whatever. Like, everybody's kind of the same. You can stick handle, skate, show what you do. But what is going to differentiate somebody making the NHL and having a long career is usually up here. It's the mental side of it. It's the tenacity. It's the attitude. And it's hard to like suss that out of guys. To be honest, in a short duration or a short amount of time, it's hard to get a sense of the type of attitude that somebody has. And so I said, like, look, like you got all these prospects and these new draft picks, and I feel like I can give you a pretty good sense of who these guys are if you just let me screw with them a bit. And so yeah, I invited actually a guy, a really good friend of mine, Lucas Carr. He's an Army Ranger. He's from Boston, so he came up, and then two guys from the Canadian military out of Princess Patricia's regiment in Edmonton. The three of them and then myself kind of set up and a little itinerary of how we're going to take these guys and take them out into the forest, and they're going to run them through some of the drills that they would have done in army camp and stuff like that. And then we're going to have like a sit down meal around the fire with like army meals, like the MREs, they're terrible. Yeah. And then they just shared stories about like literally like living on the side of a hill in Afghanistan, eating Tabasco chicken for 2 months straight. And so we told some of these stories, and really it was just to get a sense of like who these guys were and how they reacted. And so being thrown into a situation where you're like at a rookie camp and all of a sudden like you're doing army drills and you're being like, you're just out of your elements, right? And you're being thrown a curveball. And what do you do? Like how do you react to the curveball? How do you react to being a little bit uncomfortable? And it was like a really quick divide. And it wasn't my assessment. I wanted the assessment of the army dudes that didn't really know the guys inside out and this and that. And I asked them at the end of it, like, who stood out to you? Like, which guys? And it was Draisaitl and Darnell Nurse were the two guys that, like, right away, like, took leadership positions and, like, all right, like, let's go, let's gather around. Yeah. They were the guys that were kind of, like, leading, like, hey, like, let's do it this way, let's do it. And, like, let's go. And then there was a group of guys that were just like, why are we doing this? Like, this is stupid. Like, whatever, like, the complainers. Yeah. And it's amazing how quickly they reveal themselves in a situation where they're uncomfortable. And so at the end of our time with them, like we gave an assessment back to the coaches of like, look, like here's what we did. It was fun. We told stories, and there was some good learning. Obviously from the guys. These guys are incredibly seasoned in their own rights with the Army and have seen some tough stuff.
Yeah.
So it was good for them to learn from it, but this other side of it of revealing like these are leadership qualities that we saw in guys. This is the kind of being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like which guys were good at it, which guys really struggled, and so we gave our assessments back to the coaching staff, and that's just another thing for them to see as opposed to like doing a drill on the ice and who can shoot hard. And, like I said, you can fake it in a short time on the ice, but it's hard to fake it into, something like that. Right. So I thought it was actually quite valuable, I think, to kind of expose both good and bad.
Yeah. Maybe everybody should do that. Seems like you got a pretty good read on them. I mean, Darnell Nurse and Leon Draisaitl, they're having really long careers.
Yeah, for the right price, I'm open for that.
Do you think team culture is just as important as individual talent? Like for example, the Oilers currently have a ton of talent. I'm not going to speak on what their team culture is because I don't know. Only they know. But they've got Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. I mean, insane individual talent. Do you think do you think team culture is as important, if not more important, than individual talent?
I mean, I guess there's like using Connor and Leon both, I mean, are just exceptional talents, right? Yeah. But like the worst guy in the NHL is still like insanely talented, and I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is like, oh, you're a fourth liner. It's like, dude, that fourth liner would come and absolutely light up like any other league. Like, so even the bad players in the NHL are so good. And so that's the way that I see it, is that, the culture within a room and the way a team practices, is usually driven by the best players and leaders in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And so stuff like that, where it becomes contagious, so like the Bruins, for example, when I played, you had Bergeron and Chara were like kind of the two real horses on the team, and they set the tone so that when we practiced, like, it was like game speed, going at each other hard, and this is just the way it is, and it was accepted, and it becomes contagious, and there's like a kind of like an inner competition almost amongst the team, like to strive and be better and like excel. But they were really setting the tone for, this is how it is, this is what it's going to be. And it does, it like that work ethic and that lifestyle and that mentality does become contagious. And so, team culture, I think, is important that way, because it'll bring out the best in everybody, and they'll operate, closer to, what they're capable of operating at. And so, and that goes from everything too, like as far as like a coach too, of creating like a positive environment where people feel empowered and not just like always afraid to make a mistake. So it's kind of all of it, like, honestly, like, but I think, like, we all kind of know, like, when do we do our best? It's like, there's enough pressure on you to perform. So obviously you can't just be loosey-goosey, and coach can't, oh, no problem, don't worry about that giveaway.
Yeah.
Like, there's accountability, but there's not like a dark shadow over you the whole time where you're scared to make a mistake and you're scared to do something wrong, right? You have to feel loose and happy and confident. And so it's this weird chemistry of like, accountability, but fun, like competitiveness, but like humor, like all these different things, but it's just a healthy environment. Like when you have it, it's like magic, and it can bring the most out of, the third liners, the fourth liners, the top end talent. Like, they're going to get a ton of ice. They're going to play great because they're just great players.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that team culture, and the culture of a room and the feeling and the vibe of a room, maybe it's not going to affect those top guys as much as it affects everybody else. Like the second liner, third liner, fourth liner, that is, trying to keep his job and trying to get some ice. And if those guys are playing either super tight because it's just this like looming, like I'm going to lose my job, or I'm scared, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't have that kind of environment. Like the type of environment or a team culture where, those guys feel valued and like really respected, like, that's going to just bring the most out of them. So that's kind of where I see the value of that, of like, hockey's still a team sport, and you need all four lines, and, the best teams and the best environments are going to bring the most out of the role players.
Right. I mean, I would think players who feel comfortable being who they are on their team, they can talk to their teammates about anything, more or less anything. Those are the teams that are successful. That's how I see it. Obviously, I think that's basically what you just said. But do you think that was, obviously it was a very talented team in 2011. I don't think people realize how much depth was on that team. Do you think that might have been one of the difference makers on it? Because it seemed like you guys meshed so well.
Yeah, I think, honestly, like, looking back at it, like, the most important thing we did, I think, was like the way we practiced was, and like the environment that we had, the culture that we had, like the level of intensity that we had in practices, and like in competition with each other to make each other all better, was healthy. Like, it was really good. And the exact same intensity and way that we practiced in the wrong environment would lead to fights in practice, or like, 5 or 6 guys on the team being like, "Oh, chill out, man, it's just practice," or, like, what, like, that kind of negativity, as far as like, it's like a crab in a bucket. We have a saying in Canada. I don't know, is that an American saying too? It's like
Well, I could get. I
they
kind
always
of
try to pull you down, right? Like, who do you think you are? Like, get back down here. It's that, like, that kind of environment can exist in the NHL as well, where, let's say it's like a conditioning skate at the end of practice. Like, somebody might be super fit, so take off and try to win. Like, try to be the fittest. Like, I'm here to fit. But if, you might make the other guy look bad because he's struggling. It's like, well, that's his problem.
Right.
Like, he better get fitter.
Right.
But in an unhealthy environment, that guy's going to be like, hey, hero, like, slow down, that kind of thing. Like, so that's the difference between a winning culture and a losing culture, is the one where, the people at the bottom and the people that are, the most toxic, drag others down with them, and drag people to their level, to make themselves more comfortable and more confident. And winning cultures are the exact opposite, where that's not accepted. And we are all here to win, and we're all here to be the best.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to go hard at each other, and so I think that's what that 2011 team had, was an understanding with each other that, we are going to go hard, and we're going to compete, and we're going to hold each other accountable. And it's not like everybody was best friends. Like, we all, I think, had a deep respect for each other. And I think that we respected who each other were, and our differences, and as individuals, that we might like and be completely different people, but like, there was a deep respect for each other. And we had no question, like, when it came time to practice or a game, that like every guy was on the same page, whether he was your best friend or not, like, he was there for you, like, no questions asked. And so it was a really incredibly healthy culture in that sense. And I think it's carried through and has become who the Bruins are, right? Because it's been passed on now, through a couple generations.
Yeah. Oh boy, don't even. We get passed on through the Bruins, and Marchand was the only one to get rid of him, and then I don't even want to talk about it. I visited Canada recently, and you're talking about, I visited Nova Scotia specifically. Me and my family visited the kid that came to live with us to play hockey around here. We got pretty close with the family, so we went to go see them. We were at the hockey rink, his local hockey rink, and I can't even pinpoint what the difference is there versus here, but everybody seemed like they wanted to be there. No parents were forcing their kids to be out there. I don't know if that is making any sense, but you go to a rink around here, it seems like all of the parents, that's their retirement plan out on the ice right now. Like, everybody that we saw when we were in Nova Scotia, all like, there was a bunch of little kids on the ice. They all looked so happy, even a little bit older. They all looked like they wanted to be there. Here, sometimes it's not as much. I was just shocked by that difference. Do you see that, or is it something that's just normal to you?
Well, it's good to hear, I guess, from a Nova Scotian perspective, but it's sad to hear if that's what you're seeing at the rinks down there.
It is.
But you see it. I mean, at an individual basis. I don't know, like, if it's different, north of the border versus south of the border. But like I said, I think going back to earlier in the conversation, like, around youth sports, like, I don't know, like, I know the approach I took I have two daughters. They both play rugby now because they wanted to play rugby, and they tried all the sports, and they did all the things, but like, I didn't care what sport they played. I just, as long as they did something, and stayed active and healthy, and did, and when they're doing something, like, play it hard and have fun and like work hard and like all that kind of stuff. So, but it was always self-driven as to what they were interested in, and what they wanted to do. And like, I guess for any sport, like, the goals can be messed up, right? Like, if your goal is to get a D1 scholarship or make it pro, like, that could be an outcome. Like, it being an outcome is great. Right. Like, that's awesome. But if that's your goal, like, your whole approach to sports becomes a bit twisted, because now the pressure and the anxiety and all that, all that comes with it, it's actually self-defeating. Like you're not actually going to perform as well with that extra burden on you, especially as a kid. You don't know how to handle that kind of pressure as a kid.
Right.
So yeah, the ones that keep making it, like I said, they're usually the ones that are self-driven. Like, and you're going to find it, other examples. You're going to find examples of like the crazy parent who, pushed and pushed and pushed and their kid made it.
Yeah.
Like, of course, like there's one-offs, but on a whole, the vast majority of professional athletes and Olympic athletes, like they're going to be those just kids and sometimes they got like a little OCD, or ADHD, and they can throw a ball against a wall for hours on their own with nobody asking and nobody bothering them, and they love it.
Yeah, that's true.
They're going to take a million shots and they're going to get in the gym on their own, like all those little things, but it's going to be largely self-driven. Parents can kind of guide and nudge and assist, but like I said, like if it's not coming from internal, like it's probably usually not going to work out.
Right. And I think you touched on this earlier at a podcast I was listening to that you were on. You said kids who play sports are, I don't know the percentage, but they're less likely to be in the justice system. Do you want to talk about a little bit about that? Because I think sports are so important, building the skills needed to interact with others. I mean, it's all at a fast pace. If you're playing hockey, it's all at a fast pace. So you really got to dial that in quick if you want to be. I mean, it sounds silly, but like if you're like 6 years old, if you want to be okay at hockey, you got to figure out how to talk to others.
Well, I mean, that's more from a legislative affairs point of view, right? When you're talking about government funding, obviously the Canadian system is a bit different than the American. But in Canada, like we have universal healthcare, right? Like everybody's got healthcare. And so when we talk about funding sports and keeping kids in sports and adults in sports for that matter, you're starting to talk about what is the role of the government to make sure that arenas and different athletic facilities and registration fees, you're doing it in a way that everybody has access to sport, right? And then kids aren't dropping out of sport, for whatever number of reasons, whether it's a bad coach or the inability to pay for registration or the inability to get to a facility, whatever it is, right? Yeah. But you're from a government's point of view, you're looking at it as an investment. And so the investment in sport has traditionally been looked at as like sports are fun, it's great times, great way to learn lessons, which it is. But it is also like the best form of healthcare, right? Like keeping people healthy, all the preventable diseases that come from being active, throughout your childhood and into adulthood, that costs us money, right? Like an unhealthy individual in Canada costs everybody money because we have universal healthcare. So the government has incentive to put money in sport just to keep people healthy. But the additional part is we know from data that kids that play sports stay out of jail and they stay out of the justice system. Every single person that goes through and into the justice system costs the government a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it costs society a lot of money. And it ruins a lot of lives, right? So the more people that we can keep out of the justice system, that's a win for us. The additional is that we know the same thing from data. Kids that play sports get better grades in school. It's like all these positive, things that sport does for an individual also translate into, positives for the entire country or community as well. So, yeah, so that's really like when you're making an argument for mass investment in sport, it's more than just like, it's fun. It's, give people a chance to go pro or have a good time or whatever it is.
Right.
It builds up those individual skills and who you become as a person. But societally, like it is an investment in a better society as well.
So I'm not sure if this is something you're involved with, but the cost to play hockey is a huge barrier for new people who want to try it. Is there any program out there that's working on, maybe in Canada, if that's what you're dealing with, but like in the US, is that something that's in the works, or is there currently something that's going on right now where like kids can try hockey for like half of what it normally costs, which is quite a bit still. But
Yeah, well, like the NHL has learn to play programs, which are incredibly successful as far as introducing the game to kids. And so every single one of our clubs participates in it. We partner with Bauer in Canada, a thing called First Shift. So equipment is subsidized. And so I know depending on the club market, there's equipment that's free all the way down to very low cost, for a kid to play and learn hockey. For a number of weeks. So it's a really, really solid program. But yeah, the linking up to what comes after that, we have some clubs that do it very well, for that next step. But eventually, yeah, like you do run into, travel hockey and equipment costs, which it's a massive barrier. I love house league hockey. I love like rec hockey.
yeah,
I know growing up, like the influence that had on me. We used to have every single day. Basically, you can go to the local rink, and it was $2.50. I sound like an old person saying this, but it was $2.50, and you could play drop in and just drop in hockey for an hour. And like there'd be all kinds of people out there, but there would always be like some junior kids, and like if an NHLer was back for the summer, like he'd be out there ripping around, and
yeah,
it was incredible. Like just to have open ice and the ability to just like drop in and what do you guys call it, stick and puck? I think
yeah,
in Boston, right? So, yeah. Anyways, but it was incredible, right? So, are the programs necessarily at the NHL is like doing learn to play is one of them. Creating ball hockey league is another, obviously for a lower cost form of hockey. But when it comes to the higher levels of ice hockey, yeah, it's tough. That's when you get into the world of Hockey Canada and USA Hockey, and in the States, a lot of obviously private rinks, and ice availability is difficult and sometimes out of the reach of our direct control. But yeah, obviously from the NHL, we want to influence, the types of programs that keep people in the sport, and things like rec league hockey and beer league hockey and house league hockey are incredibly important for our sport, and we got to make sure that they're not pushed out of ice times and availability, which is unfortunately, I think, happening at a higher rate.
So you talk about ice availability. I had a little job at the local rink around here, and there was a high school team that I cleaned their locker rooms at night. It was horrible. After beer league, it was bad. But they were practicing at 11:30 at night because they weren't allowed to, but there was no ice time, and the ice time I think was like $250 an hour, which is, I mean, I don't know if that is a lot compared to anywhere else, but it's the barriers to enter into hockey, I think, are getting higher. The barriers to entry to getting into hockey when you're like under 10 years old, I feel like are getting lower, and it's easier to get into hockey because of like programs like you just said, learn to play. But when you get up there, like so many of my friends, they had to move, like they have to go and live at, I mean, they had to move to go play hockey. They live in like New Hampshire, and there aren't many roads that don't require a ton of money in hockey, in my experience. I mean, obviously you have more experience, but is there, I know that there's a lot of people that just stop playing because it costs so much money. Like they had so much talent and they just had like maybe a rough home life, but they couldn't afford it anymore. Like there was this kid on my middle school hockey team, probably the best teammate I've ever had. Like, you know how you just said any NHL player would go down and they would dominate anything? It seemed like he was in a different league and came down and just made everybody look silly. It was off. He was amazing, but he stopped playing because he had like, there was something going on and he just couldn't afford it. Is there anything going on in the NHL, like not NHL level, but their umbrella of the NHL to lower the costs for that age group?
Well, we have a few of the jurisdictions. Like I said, when you get into the world of Hockey Canada and USA Hockey, which are the governing bodies for youth hockey,
Mm-hmm.
in both countries, and they run the programming, throughout the countries. And we have a couple great examples of programs that exist. The one that comes to mind right off the bat is in Alberta, actually my home province. Hockey Alberta has created like a very like good rec league program, and so they have structured in a way that it's still competitive and it's good and it's well supported and you get good ice times,
Mm-hmm.
and it's throughout the province, but you're asking less of time, from the athletes, and
Mm-hmm.
so they're not like their whole lives aren't taken over by hockey and practice, but you're also asking for less costs, and so they are reducing it. You're not doing travel tournaments and all these different things, but you're still playing the game,
Right.
and you're playing it in a fun setting, competitive setting, and they've seen a lot of success with it throughout the province as well, because I think there are a ton of families and a ton of players that they just want to play,
Right.
but I think unfortunately, in a lot of jurisdictions like house league are dropping. Like it's just kind of been, it's not taken as seriously, right? And it's not
Mm-hmm.
as well supported. And like I said, the competitive ice time of trying to grab an hour or two of ice at any rink, if they're highly motivated, you know, rep teams that are just going to outbid you for the ice or whatnot.
Right.
Like it's going to be tough for those house league players, right? Especially
Mm-hmm.
if they don't have the strength of an organization behind them. So I think what Alberta's doing is incredibly positive. I think the NHL's role is, ultimately like finding those jurisdictions that are doing a good job of it, and then help influence and to try to get those types of programs enacted in more provinces and states.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I think like it is a matter of USA Hockey and Hockey Canada, really leading the charge in youth hockey, to help that. And then, like I said, us as much as we can to use our influence to support and encourage, that type of programming.
I think that how my question is, how can you tell? I think it starts with how can you explain to people that sports are important? Because I mean, it sounds silly. But went to Canada for the first time. It was like a culture shock. Everybody had like a team they were on. Whether they were like 60, they had like some just fun league that they were doing. Nobody does that here. Nobody does that. I think that that would be the first step. Explain to people why it's important so they know, like, tax money, like if they're getting if you know what I mean? I think you have to explain why it's important before people actually make it before it changes. Because
Or just make it fun,
right.
because I think, I think that ultimately, like, most people that I've met in my life enjoy fun. And so that's
Yeah,
one
I
thing that
think everybody.
it's one thing that most people have in common, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
so I
true.
think it's more about the structure of like, not necessarily like, is it available, but is it fun? Do you
Right.
have a good time? Like for most of these like youth games or adult games, like why do we turn the music off? Like play it.
Right.
Like why? Like it's like let's start with fun, and then like make that the number one question of every like exit interview for whether it's a rep team or a host league team or a hockey camp. Like, did you have a good time? Like,
Yeah.
and that should be the leading question, not like how do we skill develop and how do we do it? Like it's ultimately like most people are drawn to a good time, and like I said, we develop a good memory because it was fun. I
Yeah.
know my oldest daughter got into rugby. She had a great time at practice, but like they had like ice cream sandwiches and a barbecue after practice like once a week, and she's
Yep.
like, this is incredible. She's like, this
Right.
is awesome. And it's like there are some sports that do it better than others, and understand the community element and the fun element and feeling like you're part of something, like
Mm-hmm.
part of a friend group. And um I think ultimately like, humans aren't that complicated. They like fun, they like to
Mm-hmm.
feel like they're part of something special, they like to feel like they're valued. So if you create that type of environment that sends people away, like after they, interact with that, like they're going to keep coming back for more.
And I think time requirement is like practicing every single day. I think that indirectly reduces the amount of fun you can have. Say like, oh, your friend asks you, oh, hey, you want to go hang out? Oh, sorry, I have hockey practice. And then you associate that with a bad memory. I mean, I think that at a certain level, obviously, yeah, practice every day, you know, if you're taking it seriously. But like these travel teams, I feel at a certain level, I think you should, as you said, I think you should prioritize fun because it's probably driving a lot of people out of the game, in my opinion.
Well, even at the NHL level, I mean,
Yeah,
the teams that have fun
that's
usually do
true.
pretty well.
I mean, I feel
Like,
like the 2011 Bruins teams had pretty fun, a lot of
yeah,
fun.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, do you want to talk a little bit more about those hockey bags you're making? I think my Wi-Fi cut off. Then you're making them from recycled signs. Is that correct? That's what you had said. I mean, are you trying to sell them? Is that the end goal?
Well, right now, so like we're using the signage from different events, and
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of like still in like the test mode. Like, all right, how are these things going to turn out, and like, are they pretty good? But yeah, I sent the first batch down to the Tampa Bay Lightning from Stadium Series, and
Oh
so
well.
they're using it to raise some money for their foundation. So they're putting them up for auction, to their fans. But yeah, they're the used signs from Stadium Series, and they're kind of cool, like old gym bags.
Yeah,
And so yeah, I've been testing out some different patterns like hockey bags, gym bags, backpacks, that kind of stuff.
that's cool.
And so like I can make a few here, obviously on my own. It's like fun. I'm like the artisan bags, like small
Yeah,
scale.
yeah.
But then we're also talking to companies that do this at scale,
Mm-hmm.
and companies that do this. That's their business.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a few companies that have been doing it for a number of years with old billboards. So they'll take like old billboard material or old signage from billboards and turn it into bags, wallets, like all these kind of different things. And so so we're exploring what that looks like of working with a third party to do it at a bigger scale. So yeah, but it's cool. Like I said, it's how do you take something that used to be thrown away and turn it into like kind of
Right.
a pretty cool like little memorabilia piece
Yeah.
and something that's actually useful. So
So with green initiatives, they are normally more expensive. Recycling, you pay for the idea that saving the planet. How and they normally don't succeed. I'm not saying this won't succeed. That's not what I'm saying. But like how sometimes there's things that like sound really good like oh yeah, I'm on board, but they just can't sustain it from a money standpoint because it costs too much to produce these recycled goods. How do you avoid that in this situation? I'm assuming that the cost is next to nothing because they're reused signs, but the manufacturing, and it might not even be just with this specific example, but do you have any opinion on how green initiatives like this could be sustained longer than most do?
well, I'm not really sure the framing of your question is accurate. I think that um, it depends what you're talking about, right? Like I
Right.
think you think of like solar or wind power now is the
Right.
cheapest form of energy
Mm-hmm.
that there is, right? And so like if you're trying to build a kilowatt of energy, like you're building it with green technology,
Mm-hmm.
right? So and not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's the economical thing to do. So I think on large scale projects like that, like that's absolutely the case that the sustainable technology is the best technology and the
Right.
cheapest. And I think some of the smaller scale stuff, like I think capitalism. We live in a country where there's people that are going to start a business and sell something for the amount of money they think they can make.
Right.
And
That's
so
that's more where I was going with it. Like little shops that are just upcharging like crazy and like that's not I didn't mean the like the solar. I did like large scale things normally do pretty well, but I'm not even sure of the statistic, but I'm assuming that there's a lot of like little places that they try and do sustainable practices and they charge you the difference just because you see, oh yeah, they're saving the planet. Do you think that's a problem with the whole I don't even know what the like it's not a movement, it's just like a way to be, I guess. Do you think that might be a problem?
Well, I think that there's bad actors for sure within any industry, right? And so if somebody thinks, they can take advantage of, throwing a organic label or some sort of, hokey messaging on a product and just double the price for the sake of doubling the price and taking advantage of people, like, yeah, that's a huge problem. I think, but I think that there's also the opposite of, true, good craftsmanship and good products that are being made that aren't, I think of maybe fashion as a good example, right? Like there's fast fashion. Like, yeah, you can go online and buy a t-shirt for next to nothing these days, and, clothes or whatever it is. And it might last you for, a couple months before it literally falls apart. It's just cheap material, but it's cheap to buy.
Right.
And
it's made to throw away.
And then there's stuff that's built right, and done well. And it's good materials, and there's craftsmanship that goes into it. And so there's obviously, like, there's no shortage of variance in every industry of, what's good quality and what's not. And, if you're actually getting your money's worth, or you're just paying for a brand or a label or something like that. But I think that, as a consumer, it's important to know where your stuff is coming from, how it's being made, the value that you're actually buying, and make your decisions wisely. I think that, nobody wants to be taken advantage of and, have money come out of their pocket that isn't spent well. But like I have a lot of problems. Like, I'm very frugal with the stuff I buy, but I have no problem spending money on something that quality that's going to last me, a couple of decades. Like, I have good purchases that I've made where, whether it's clothing or, something, a tool I use or something like that, where, it might not be the cheapest option, but, you spend the money and it's not going to the landfill. Yeah. It's not, it's not becoming, somebody else's trash.
Yeah. Buy quality over quantity. Like recycling broken hockey sticks, making like putters out of them. That's I've always wanted one of those. That'd be the coolest thing to use. I completely agree with what you said. I framed it wrong. I framed it wrong. I was kind of stumbling over, like, what I was losing what I was trying to say. Towards the end of my research, I saw something about the November Project. Now, I didn't look into it because I wanted you to explain to me exactly what it is. Could you shed some light on what the November Project is?
Yeah, well, it was a group it still is, that I joined in Boston when I lived there. It was during the lockout, during the second lockout, when we didn't have availability to the rink to work out and stuff like that. And I was running stairs at Harvard Stadium just on my own to stay in shape. And then I ran into a guy at a bike shop that I know. And he's like, "Oh, where are you coming from?" And I was like, "Oh, I was running stairs, trying to stay in shape." And he's like, you should go out with this group. These guys that run them every Wednesday morning." Mm-hmm. He's like, "They're super fit." And I was like, "Oh, sweet. All right." So I went out and the next Wednesday and joined these guys, and they called themselves a November Project because they made it a project in November to, like, go and work out at Harvard Stadium and run the stairs, because it was free. And they had no money. And so they committed to each other to make sure they'd do it all month. And it kind of turned into, like, okay, and then bring a friend, and some more people started showing up, and guys like me started showing up. And so I started running stairs and doing stuff with them when I lived in Boston to stay in shape. And the community really grew. Like, we'd have days at Harvard where there was like hundreds of people.
Wow.
And everybody just running, crushing stairs, and some people super fit, and some people just, like, literally just trying to, like, do the first workout they've probably done in a while. But everybody was doing it together, and, it was kind of a set time, and you take a group picture at the end and high fives. And it was like a really positive, really positive group of people that were just getting after it and staying fit and not having to pay money for a gym membership or something like that. Right. So I thought it was just the coolest thing. It was good people. And obviously, like, it's more fun than running it by myself and trying to like, catch, there's some really fit dudes that are running, some really fit women. So like you try to like keep up with them. It was awesome. And so, yeah, I did that when I was in Boston. And then when I signed with Edmonton, I was like, it was like I don't know, like a really positive part of my life. And so I started one in Edmonton, like the exact same group, and put it out there. And then over the years of being in Edmonton, my sister and a friend helped run it. And yeah, we had the same thing, like hundreds of people would show up and run stairs and do these workouts and just for free, and so, yeah, it was pretty cool. And like the coolest actually story is, I ended up officiating a wedding a couple summers ago. The very first one that I did in Edmonton, I put a tweet out, tweet or Instagram, I can't remember, but put it out there like, hey, like I'm going to do this November Project thing in Edmonton, like come show up. We're going to do this workout, yada, yada. So the first time I did it, there's probably like 20 people that showed up.
Yep.
But 2 of the people that showed up ended up getting married. Like 4 years, like they met at this first workout.
That's awesome.
And then years later ended up getting married. And so there's like, yeah, like relationships that started, friendships that started, people getting fit and, crushing goals that they had, with fitness and stuff like that. So yeah, it was just a really cool group.
And you said that it was so positive. Like you said, the people who it looked like they hadn't worked out in a while. They were there because nobody probably cared that they had not worked out in a while. Everybody was welcome. I mean, and that brings me back to what I was talking about what we were talking about with the culture. And you just need to create a positive culture, and everybody doesn't have to necessarily get along, but just respect other people. Or live by the golden rule. Treat others as you want to be treated. I mean, I wouldn't want to be made fun of if I was going to some place like the November Project doing that. Like, everybody should be creating a culture of acceptance is hard to do, but when you do it, I mean, it's insanely successful. Like the November Project, like you moved it from here to here. It was a long ways away.
Yeah, it was a great community. And everybody's got stuff. Like the older you get, the more you realize it. Everybody's got stuff in their lives, right? And you never know somebody's full story.
Right.
The best way to go through life is to just, expect the best of people and give people the benefit of the doubt. And sometimes people will screw you over or whatever it is. But like, you can never get so cynical that, you're entering life with a, grudge or, a pessimistic view of the world or of people. Yep. Life's too short to operate like that.
I agree completely. I mean, I don't have as much experience as you do, but I mean, you think about what someone else, like if someone cuts you off in traffic and they're in a rush, like oh wow, what a jerk. Like maybe he's on his way to the hospital because he cut off his arm and he's just driving with one arm. You never know.
You're taking on a big issue there in Massachusetts. The drivers are really well known for their understanding of others.
Let me clarify. I get so much people. So I'm from Maine.
Oh, okay.
So people in my comments section, they're like, "Oh my God, you suck, you're lying," and I'm like, "I'm not lying. I just never. I have a Boston sports page. I mean, what other sports do I have? You're
in New England.
Yeah, right. Where am I gonna go? They were getting mad for no reason. Yeah, it's bad. I had to tell my mom had some surgeries down there, and the traffic, and I mean, it wasn't that bad because I'm a really aggressive driver. Like you have to be on the offense all the time. So if you're like that, it's really not a problem. But there are people that are really bad at driving down there. So I'm not sure. I'm going to respect your time. I appreciate you coming on.
I was going to say I got to jump.
Okay, so one more question. It's from a subscriber. What was the energy like when Greg Campbell broke his leg? Did it fire up the team? He is very excited to ask you a question, I must note.
I mean, that was pretty badass. It's one of those funny things that like you look back and you're like, that was crazy. But it was also very unsurprising. Mm-hmm. Like I think to teammates and stuff, like when you're in the room, it was almost like, well, of course he did, like it would be weird for him not
Right.
to try to finish, like, and that's not taking anything away from it. It's more actually giving it like even more praise, because like it was actually unsurprising that he did that because of who he is. And it would probably have been unsurprising if any other guy on the team would have done the same, because like that's who they were and that's who we were, as the team culture to your say, like anybody would have done that. And yeah, like, so he's pretty awesome. He's a tough guy for sure. And but deeply respected, right? Like, I think the thing about those teams is that we had our superstars and we had our guys at the top that would score the big goals and do the big things, but like those guys had just as much respect for the bottom pair D or the fourth line as they did for the captain.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's very important. All right. So thank you for coming on, everybody. You can find Andrew at Ference, Andrew.Ference on Instagram. He doesn't follow me back. I'm not going to cry about it. Don't worry. Anyway.
Just look for the chicken content.
Yeah. Just look for the chicken content. Yeah. Is there any place else you want people to check you out? What are you up to?
No, that's good, man. Okay. Instagram's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If I start a TikTok page, and then you'll know I'm really onto something good.
Okay, good. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I mean, I always say this, but like, you didn't have to do this. Thank you so much. But it was really cool talking with you. I mean, I watched you.
It was good to talk to you as well.
I watched you growing up. It's the coolest thing. I was sitting here like, oh wow, like, okay, I'm talking. Oh, talking. Okay, all right. Let me readjust. But I'm sure it's weird it's not weird for you, but like, yeah. Anyway, all right. Thank you for coming on.
I wish you the best of luck, man. Keep going. Keep doing the good thing, and like you mentioned earlier, like beat to your own drum, right? Yeah. You don't have to be like everybody else or like anybody else. You just do what feels right to you, and you'll be just fine, and especially in this space.